everyone to another chapter of our NookChat, which is through the Nooksack Valley Heritage Center here at the library. And we're very excited today that we're going to talk about the Hopewell Grange. And we have two special people with us. We have Francis Westergreen and we have Harlan Ellenboss. And they are going to tell us a little bit of what went on in their life and what it did for the community. And I know that I didn't join the Grange, but I knew a lot of people that did, and they talked to me, and I just really loved listening to people. And I think where we need to start out, we need to have a little background of where you came from, just a little history here. You can talk as much as you want. And by the way, if there's any questions from the audience at all, just raise your hand and they will answer them. So Francis, would you like to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm Frances Westergreen, and I was born in Lansing, Michigan. And by the time I was 3 years old, we were already in California because they had told my father, who was an electrician, that the oil fields had great potential. So we were there for 2 years until the Great Recession, and then there was no job. My father had relatives that lived in the Everson area and told them we should move up here because it was just like California. The roses bloomed in December. And so we did that. We had a little farm on the corner of the Nooksack and Lindsay Road. And the Lindsay Road was named after my father's relatives. So, but I grew up here then from 5 years old till ancient I am. Yes, went to Nooksack Valley High School, and I went to nursing school at St. Luke's, which is no longer a nursing school. Mm-hmm.
Well, now, I knew where you grew up, where the Westergreens lived. Can you say where that is? Because a lot of people here might not know.
Oh, that's where my husband
Yes,
lived, on the South Pass Road. What is it, 5-6 miles up there to the homestead? John was in high school. He was 3 years ahead of me, but I didn't pay attention to him. And he was waiting to go in the service because his older brother was going to be back, and they were all drafted. And so he drove the school bus. In fact, he drove the school bus while he was in high school. And if you can imagine them doing that now. Anyway, when he let me off at my corner, he caught the door on my heel, and I went down. I just went, it didn't hurt me, only my pride. So anyway, so I was really mad. I was in a play at the high school because I was a senior by then, and he came back to apologize to me. And he said, I have to take you to dinner or something. Well, that's the beginning. So.
Okay. So that's how it went.
That's how it went, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Can we go to Harleen, and maybe you could tell a little bit about what is going on, basically, maybe when you came here, how long you've been here, just a little bit about your life.
Okay. So, actually, I was born in Bellingham. I've been born and raised here, and so I have lived here all my life. Started out on a farm that my dad owned on Rock Road, 3 miles east of Sumas. Okay. And so I grew up there, and my husband grew up in town of Sumas, and he's Glenn Ellenboss, and they have the Ellenboss Feed Company. And so we did not meet until after he came back from the Army, and that was probably in 1973. And I had gone to nursing school, and I was a nurse at St. Luke's until it was bought out by St. Joe's. It was St. Joe's then.
Wow.
And then I worked for Peace Health until, I'm not certain, somewhere in the 90s. And then retired from that because I was homeschooling my kids, and I wasn't able to do a good job of both. So
So you're retired,
I am retired.
semi-retired, maybe a little too?
Semi-retired.
Okay. So basically, what date, basically, I'd like to know, Whatcom County, when you came? Do you have any idea?
Well, so I've always lived in Whatcom County.
Okay, you always
Yeah.
lived, so
Was
basically,
born in Whatcom County, lived
Okay.
in, grew up here,
Okay.
went to local schools here,
Okay.
yeah.
so let's shift a little gear here. Let's go to the Hopewell Grange.
Yes.
And some people might not know where it's located.
Yeah.
Francis,
On the Hopewell Road,
okay?
on the corner of the, it's on the Hopewell Road, right across from the cemetery on the Hopewell, and some people go so fast by there, they don't see
Kinda
it.
miss it, yeah.
Yeah,
So they, of course, where the Hopewell Grange met, it used to be Hopewell Schoolhouse,
that's right.
number 21. And I should say that another thing too, that the Hopewell Grange was organized April 24th, 1912. And so there's been a lot of past people, of course, before your time that went. And I would like to know how you got started by going to the Grange, joining or hearing about it. Do you remember that?
I do. When we lived in Bellingham, my husband was the county agent here for Whatcom County, and they would want him to come and speak. And so we were out at the little Grange out off northwest, North Bellingham it is, and it's still functioning. So in those days, it was such a secret thing, you know, the Grange. I don't know if you know that it came down from the Masons, and that's all the secret. They had the password. Well, he wasn't a member, so he had to stay out in a little anteroom, and he was so cold by the time they called him in to do the
Okay.
program. So he said, we're going to join the Grange. They want me to give some slides, and I'm not staying in that anteroom. And that was the main reason. And I've been a member of a Grange for 50 years.
So I remember you telling me you were a Grange member for 52 years, is that correct?
55 now.
55 now, oh, that's changed. And so you wanted to do something, and the Grange was doing a lot of things, and you decided to join, and then you turn it around, right?
Well, maybe
You helped.
Hopewell, yeah.
Okay.
We were transferred and lived a lot of places, and so the Grange was always there. And the Grange has done a lot for the communities. You know, the building was there for weddings, for memorial service, and we reached out to a lot of things. The homeschool used Hopewell. You know, they could have different functions and music, and we had members. The Grange sponsors a lot of contests, and one member, one of the Haas, Luke Haas, won in the talent contest and went on to what they call state.
Okay. Well, now, let's go back to Arlene. Now, when did you join the Grange and get interested?
So I was interested a long time before I joined. And so I think I was probably a member maybe only 5 years. But Francis mentioned one of the houseboys. So Greta, his mom, they lived kitty corner to us on the Elm Road. And we did a lot of things at the Grange. And she had become a member quite a bit before that. And so it actually then wasn't until my son went to boot camp. And that was a really difficult time for me. And so Greta said to me, well, you know, why don't you just come and play bingo with us at the Grange? So I did. And Doreen Dykstra was there, and so we played bingo that night, and it was just, it was good socialization. However, prior to that, we had a lot of functions there, like Francis said. It was very good for homeschoolers because they had a large area where the kids could play. We could organize games. We had the dads come, and they would, one dad at a time would talk to the kids about what their career was, and so we used the Grange for a lot of things, and it just really fit well with our philosophy of it doesn't need to be a big fancy place to meet. And I don't know if we were a little anti-establishment, but now with all the social media and everything, it was some still of the old socialization that really fit well with us for our families, and so it met just a lot of our needs that way too, and had a lovely kitchen. A large kitchen, and so, you know, all of our functions were revolved around food too. And they would always have a special program. So in our meetings, we tried to have speakers come to our meetings, and it was very informative. And I don't know if anybody else here has ever homeschooled, but I learned just as much as my kids did when I homeschooled. So.
Well, to me, the reason why it was basically my idea to come together on the Grange, Hopewell Grange, is because I seen it, which it's always a place, community to gather, and there was always something going on all the time, and they just had a lot of fun.
Yes, we did.
And you know, and there was you know, certain ones held offices and everything, and it was just really neat. And I always heard about it all the time. And I knew a lot of people. They're gone now. I could mention names, but you probably know them. But anyway, and it was their life, and they made it their life, and that was the neat part. And one thing they had, by the way, you met what, once a month? Was it once a month?
Twice a month.
Was
Twice.
it twice a month?
Yeah, it was twice.
Was it, what was it, Thursday nights or?
Although actually we had toward the end, we were meeting once a month. It was the first Monday of every month.
Oh, okay.
And then for a meeting.
Okay.
And then we would have other activities in between. that were
So
planned.
what I was wondering too is, of course, you did things with other Granges, and you had that nice little park out back to the south underneath the fir trees. And I'm going to be coming later on to something we're going to talk about. But basically, you always had things going, and you had a youth program. Maybe they don't know about this, or do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
Okay, Francis, would you like to say something about that?
Well, see, in the Grange has a real youth program, and they go to camp, and they have a lot of contests, and there's just a lot of things for the youth, and it's really nice because they learn. They have these, as I say, they have these talent contests. They have writing contests, craft contests, cooking, and they get together. It's once a month at one of the Granges, like in the county, and they all bring things, and they're judged, and the other thing that my husband was very interested in was the public speaking, and he helped a lot of the youth with public speaking because that was a contest too.
Yeah.
Could you mention, of course, I knew who your husband John was, but maybe they don't know. You just touched on that lightly. Go ahead.
Oh, yes, well, he was born and raised in this
Okay.
county up on South Pass, right in the house that's still standing, and then he went to college in Pullman, and I worked as a nurse with him. And, anyway, he graduated in agriculture, and he had taught school, and then he was a county agent. And so anyway, when he retired, he said he would do one thing. He belonged to the Lions Club too, but he would do one thing and then really put himself into it. You know, that's what we would do. So the Hopewell Grange was getting kind of sad, and so he did. He took on the master, and I felt sorry for these people because he really had them working. And so we put on a new roof, and then, you got to have money, and they didn't have much. And so we put on the big barbecue, and everybody worked. The Hawes were there and worked with that salmon and chicken barbecue, and we really made money, really. And the community came.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I remember the salmon barbecue back when. How many years did that go? Do you got any idea?
Was close to 10 years, but see, before then it was going. Before that even, but then it's like everything. If you don't have enough help,
Was this in the 70s, 80s?
Oh, I think so. I think so.
Okay, because I remember I went 2 or 3 times, if I can remember. You can remember more than me. But basically, there's 300 people here.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
I mean, plus, and like standing room only, and we're outside
I believe it was even into the 90s.
in the 90s.
It was into the 90s because when I first came to the Grange, they talked about it. Because we were always discussing fundraisers. How can we make money? To keep
And
the
I think
Grange
that was the
open.
biggest one,
To keep
wasn't
the
it?
Grange,
was.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You're
Yeah.
right. It's to do these things and keep the building up.
Yeah.
Then one January, John got this bright idea. He said, after Christmas, everybody's looking for something to do. He said, I think we should rent sanders and sand this floor. It had that horrible black whatever
Oh, okay.
that stuff is on the floor.
Okay.
So he consulted our son, and he said, oh yes, he said, you just go over the nail heads. And so he invited people who weren't even Grange members. He said there'll be a free meal. There'll be big lunch, with pie. And people came. The men just loved to do that. They ran those sanders. And so that's how the floor looks really nice.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
well, I remember back to the summer. I remember I would always look forward to seeing the big fish. With the date on it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That would be
Oh,
it.
yes.
Go ahead. You got anything to say about that?
Oh, yes. One of the members made that big fish and then would have it in the parade here in July in the back of a pickup.
Okay. Yeah,
And
okay.
do the parade. But it takes a lot of work. It takes a
Yeah,
lot
and
of
this was
people.
in July because I remember seeing it, and
Yeah. Yeah, that's
and
right.
that was great because it's just where everybody went,
Yes.
Yes.
and like any function, this is about the only place to see my friends, with anything. and then you're eating together, and you're talking together, you're having fun together. And to me, this is what the Grange was all about.
That's right.
But of course, we went there and ate and left everybody doing everything. But to me, that was the highlight, which it was, as you stated, and it's just something that I will never forget. And yeah, so that was, and you did Christmas things too, didn't you?
Oh, yes, we did. We put on big Christmas programs and had Santa Claus. Somebody had a suit and gave presents and the
Okay.
children performed and yeah.
Well, what was neat is, of course, I grew up in your time also, and basically everything seemed to be so simple. And just the littlest thing meant a lot.
That's right. That's
And
right.
like I say, we were all together. We did things together, and which you don't see a lot of that anymore.
That's right. And I
And-
think that's why the homeschoolers appreciated it. You know, they were just happy and we had all that space and outside and
So it was, another thing is did you ever have baseball games?
not that,
Not that you know of. Well, I remember.
I think it was at Glen Echo, the community
Okay,
club had
okay.
baseball games.
Did you have a camp outs there, or did you? What I mean by that is, I remember seeing pictures with campers everywhere.
Well, they came. Oh, we had, for a long time until it got too large, we had the NookChat Valley reunion there.
Oh, okay,
And they could come the night before with the campers.
okay.
But that,
Okay.
you know, as more come, the what am I trying to say? The grades are much larger, you know, and it just couldn't hold all those people that came. And of course, you get a rainy day, and it just, so they go to one of the schools now. But we did.
Okay.
You're right. We had
Yeah.
campers out
Yeah,
there.
campers, and then to me, it just seemed like there were so many things going on, which was good because it showed that things are happening. Do you have anything to add to that, as far as?
Well,
that
at
aspect?
some point, I would like to talk about the closing of the Grange and what led up to that. So I don't know if we're at that point yet.
Well, yeah, I didn't know if I should bring that up or not. Well, it's a true fact. It happened.
Yes,
Yes.
it's happened.
Basically, of course, I could talk about the schoolhouse. We're talking about the Grange here, but
Yeah.
I know quite a bit about that. But what the neat part is you don't know when the Grange first. Did they always? Do you know if they always met in the schoolhouse, or do you know that?
I don't know that. I think they. Do you?
Because there used to be a community hall
Oh, yes.
years
they-
ago, which
years-
would be to the east, and
That's right. That's
it
what
got
people
burnt down
say.
by somebody decided didn't want it anymore. So,
Yeah. So I don't know about
okay,
that.
okay,
That
that's
was
fine.
Before my time.
but I remember looking at records from I looked at them from 1912 on the records, but the meetings, and what was amazing is the amount of people, like you say, that you were there like 55 years, and there were the other ones, I think they were 100 years, but they weren't
yes.
that old.
Well, this is true
You know.
because they joined so young. Yeah.
And I think it's just where everybody came together. And there's one thing that I could save it for later, but I got to read this. Something I'd like to read. And this is dated February 24th, 1938. And this is a resolution, Hopewell Grange number 518, to the county commissioners. Inasmuch the naming of roads in our road district are confusing, we, the members of Hopewell Grange, have assembled do petition the county commissioners to change the name of the road passing our community hall and school to read Hopewell. Used to be the Goodwin Road.
Okay.
And a little side
know
topic,
that.
it used to be the Goodwin Road. The side topic was, from my history research, that back around 1900 in that area, it used to be the Henry Brathwaite Road.
Oh,
Because they were the homestead settlers there, and it used to be the Henry Brathwaite Road.
So when it was Goodwin, was Cyper Road there?
Yes.
It was.
okay.
Well, since we touched on that, here I go. I went to the Department of, well, anyway, I found this, the Cyper Road, I can remember, was surveyed in 1903. Wait a minute, I take that back. Excuse me, I gotta remember this. It was surveyed in 1893, and the Cyper Road was put in 1994, and it was 20 feet wide, and it was a mile at a cost of just a little over $200. And the person, they had to fall trees, they had to do what they had to do because there was nothing there. And the person, they put bids out, the person, whoever got it, said, I will do it in a month. And all they had was horses. They didn't have the amount of equipment, and he did it in a month. I won't say it wasn't the best, but they had a road there. But since you mentioned it, I just couldn't help but go on this one. So that was 1894 when the Cyper Road was put in. And I do have some information on like the, Goodwin Road, Hopewell Road, but can't remember that now. But anyway, so that's where that went. But I got to get back to reading this, so I got carried away here. But anyway, Community Hall and School to read Hopewell, including a straight line from the pavement on the west to the hill on the east. Okay? We further petition that a change be made in the name of the road called Cyper to read Helgeson Road. Because the Helgesons, they homesteaded there, and they, on the Cyper Road, just about a quarter mile south of where it meets the Hopewell Road. And it'd be on the east side, and I remember the log house. I didn't bring the picture with me, but I have a nice picture. Anyway, okay, to read Helgeson Road, this road begins at the railroad crossing at the Lawrence store. And of course, I remember Lawrence store, I used to get 5-cent candy bars there. And, and runs north to our perspective Hopewell Road, okay? A third change petitioned is the remaining of that section, the Olds Coal Road, lying between Hopewell School and Wassika Road, to be called Cemetery Road. So basically nowadays from the Mac
Know
Road,
that.
would be, they wanted that to be the Cemetery Road. Well, where they won out was, the only thing they won on this one was they did get the Hopewell Road. And Resolutions Committee would be C.G. Cayley, Olga Helgeson, and Master was Mrs. Albert Jensen. And it didn't say who the secretary was, but I know I kind of cut this up. I hope we got the gist of this thing. But to me, when I came across this, I goes, this is really something. The reason why I typed it out is because it's a little hard to read because of the writing and everything. But I thought that was really interesting. It had to do, so what I'm saying is, I don't want to take up all the conversation here, but what I'm saying is the Hopewell Grange they were doing things, which they always have.
Yes.
And you might say something about, I know that they, political candidates, they endorsed them.
Yes, they do. They are still, the Grange itself will celebrate 150 years this year, and they're still writing resolutions. When they go to State Grange, they come with all those
Yes.
resolutions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they still are writing them and taking a big part.
Well, I think too that, they want to make a difference.
Yes.
And, sometimes things change, sometimes they don't, but, you tried.
You tried.
And that's all
That's
anyone can
right.
do. And, but anyway, I thought this was really,
It is.
really something. And then, of course, when consolidation of schools happened, then, Hopewell School was no more. And then, of
That's
course, the
right.
Grange was in there. And I'm glad they were in there because they kept it up and kept it going. And was there, as far as a memory, what would be the top memory? I know that's going to be hard, of when you were at the Grange doing things that just was it? Or is that too much of a, I know it's a broad spectrum there, but there's a lot of things went on. Maybe it was just all of the things put together, I don't know. I thought there might be one thing that stood out. I'm just throwing this out.
For me, it was just the fun that we had with like-minded people.
Yes.
And it didn't have to be,
The-
it was creative. Because I even remember even just being a member for 5 years, and just going before that, we would go to events where there were talent shows. And so that the kids could become, were creative. And we were always talking about how we could pass the interest on to the next generation and keep it going. How can we, but there's so many choices, nowadays, and
That's right.
Okay.
I know when Francis was talking about Luke Haas winning that award, he became quite interested in doing movies, making movies, and so our Grange group also happened to be a lot of our homeschool friends, and so for his birthday one time, a bunch of us just pooled money
That's
so
right.
that he could to get him some good equipment. So he was making
remember
movies. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the kids would stay overnight at Greta's, and somebody would write the script, and somebody else, they all had a part, and they would create the backgrounds, and Luke ended up building a little cabin at his own house. But that was all an extension of, and because of, attending the Grange.
Okay.
It's where,
And I
Go ahead, Francis.
I think in the meetings, the thing we always had was good speakers, a good program, like the beekeepers came in and talked about the bees, and
Sure.
raising them and so
Yeah,
forth.
okay.
So it was a learning process. Not only did we have a good time, but we always learned. It was something new, learning.
So, in other words, you kept up on things.
Yes.
And of course, bees are important in our life.
Yeah.
We have to have them pollinate. But I remember going over the material that there was, I had to stop and think, like I said before, there was just so many things going on, and they were all good things. That was the best part. They were all good things. Now, far as, we'll talk about the closing. When did that happen?
I don't know exactly. You were.
it hasn't
there.
even been a year.
No, it hasn't been. Well,
well,
the membership dwindles, and you can't do fundraisers
Right.
if you don't have people to do them, and you can't keep up the building if you don't have money, and it's kind of sad, the whole process.
Yes, and we were we hung on as long as we could.
Yeah.
Yeah. And toward the end, I would say the meetings were never more than maybe 10 to 15 people. But I remember one of the last presentations we had was from Cloud Mountain. Their intern, they have interns. and they came and did a presentation. Another one was on explaining how they sectioned out the county and got those lines drawn in and everything. So, like Francis said, it was always we were always learning something, and so at one point we decided to spend some money on sending out mailers, and I don't know if you're all local. We chose I don't know what the mile radius was, but we chose a certain mile radius and sent a mailer to all the people, just trying to keep the membership up. And I do remember Greta telling me that when she got really involved, and that would have been 10 years
Oh, I think so.
ago, that it was for the same reason. And then she had people signing up to become members outside of the community even. In fact, our last president was from Britton Road, Bellingham. But they just loved the idea and the philosophy of a Grange. And so we tried really hard to keep it going. And we just finally had to
You just get
reckon
to
that,
that.
we just couldn't do it. And it was very sad for us. And so after it had formally closed, there was a time before it was going to be turned back over to the Mount Baker School District. And I don't know how they had acquired it. I don't know if they owned the land and the building.
Yes, they do.
They did.
They did.
They did.
Do you know when that happened?
Long time ago.
Long time ago?
I think when they had the school there, wasn't
So
it?
after it was Hopewell School?
It's been as many years as I
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
it's
They did.
and they owned the school and the land, and if anything were on it, everything, like I say, if it closed, it would revert back
Back
to them.
to them.
And
Yes.
of course, you wonder what's going to happen. We do not know
No,
that.
we don't know.
I thought about asking them, but maybe that's going too much. But
I don't know.
I would probably do it too.
You pay taxes, you could go
Sure.
and ask them.
But one thing about membership, I remember from going over the material and everything, that there was meetings, 40, 50, 60. I
Yes.
remember up to
Yeah.
Yes,
up to 80 people.
I know.
Yes.
Because we would have as many, usually 40. And Greta had the worst job there is in the Grange. She had this secretary. And you have all these.
So you were secretary.
No.
So I was
were you
you were-
at the
secretary?
end. At the
You
end,
and
I
all-
was. Yeah.
Oh, at
And you
the
have
end you
all
were.
these reports to make to
Yeah.
state Grange.
Yes.
We always, in the later years, I couldn't drive at night, so I didn't come on
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
the closing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
but anyway, that's what I remember, and I think the neat part is it happened for many years, and it just was, like I said before, a place to meet. And
Yeah.
I know that I don't know if it was the last meeting I went to ahead of time. Gary was there, and I wanted I says, can I take a picture shoot of the interior of, which I've been in there
Yes.
many times, because our Hopewell Cemetery Board, which I'm on, we would meet there once a year
Yeah.
and talk about the cemetery. But anyway, yeah, it's one of those things that it happened, and you just simply have to move on, even though it's hard.
There's one last thing I'd like to say about,
Okay.
just, so it had closed formally, and we were not having any more meetings, and it was like, we had to turn in our keys, like at the end of the month and stuff, and so, 3 of us members decided we wanted one last, we wanted to reminisce and just have one last little powwow at the Grange, and so we went there, and all 3 of us brought food, and we just, it was really cold because the heat had been turned off already, and or they were just keeping it at, the minimum, and so we just sat there and had one last little meal together, and it was just kind of sad. We were sorry that it was closing, but, you know, we also recognized that other things had taken the place of the Grange.
That's true.
So,
And things, you know, as we know, anything constant in life is change, whether we like it or
Yes,
not.
that's right.
And you have to go with it, whether you like it or not. And it's just one of those things that happened.
Yeah.
And is there anything else that you would like to add about any of your
Oh, I
time?
was
Go ahead.
thinking about the old building, you know, when we first got involved, that'd be about 89. The only heat in that building was a big furnace, wood furnace in the basement. So somebody had to get there an hour early to stoke that. I never saw such a big furnace. Well, before we spent much money when we got, they all decided we're going to have a oil furnace upstairs, and it was the most horrible looking thing, but nobody cared because
No,
it did heat.
oh, it put out wonderful heat.
But it
Yes.
was ugly.
Yeah.
So now the furnace down below, I was down there once many years ago.
It's still there.
Yeah.
It's still there now.
They went up through the chimney. I don't know if that's illegal, but they did.
What I was going to mention is, you remember the size of the logs? How
Yeah.
long?
Yes, I couldn't pick them up.
I heard 6 feet long.
I don't know, but I
my
couldn't pick them up.
Goodness.
It was huge.
Yeah.
I know you went down there, and of course, a big dinosaur, but you know how that goes. But that's what they had back then. It did the job.
It did.
Yeah.
Oh, it did
Yeah.
heat. It really did.
Yes. Does anyone have any questions for these two ladies? Yes.
So the school opened in '02, you said? 1902, the school?
1912.
1912.
12,
And
yeah.
then when did the school close? Around 42?
Well, when the school closed, consolidation,
I have
and
no idea.
what was that?
42. The Glen Echo was 42 is why.
Yeah, they're all-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Figured it's
then-
about the same.
Yeah, it closed, and then
The Grange.
the Grange. Yeah, actually, well, let's see, I don't want to get away from the Grange theme here, but, oh boy, I get my brain going. Of course, the school, like, say, 1912 was when it started, and the Grange, like I say, the 24th of April 1912 was when it was organized. And I remember when I went to the archives up at Western, that I went in the old books, and they didn't put bids out to build it until May of 1912. And so I don't know how long it took to build it before the kids got in. I do, you know, as far as that aspect. But that's that. But the former school was right behind it, which was Licking, and which was just a few feet behind, and then that eventually got torn down when this was built. I should have brought a picture. I actually have one of both of them together, just a few feet apart, but I didn't do that. But I guess it was my wife, Chris. I kept saying, "Man, I could bring this and I could bring that," and I thought, "Wait a minute." They're doing it here, not me. And it was,
Francis had a
I will
long
admit, it
history.
was really hard not to do more or say more, because I didn't want to take away from these ladies here. But, yes,
So do you know what year the Grange was established in Whatcom County? Hopewell Grange was established.
Be
The year.
1912 then, wasn't it?
it was 1912, I did,
For the Grange and the
With the
school.
Grange.
I do not know that. The things I did, yeah, I do not know, because when the Grange records that I did, actually, I'll say this right now, it was scans and photographs was 9,500. That took a while. That's how many it was, so I didn't print them off, of course. But I do not know that. It always said just Hopewell Grange from from then on.
It was 1912. The
1912.
Grange, so
Yeah,
the
the
school
Grange.
had to be old
But the school,
before.
but I
Yeah.
did do only one document, the only one that was there, it was Hopewell Grange, 1907. So I don't know, it was kind of by itself, and all the rest were from 1912 on. So that kind of, it's a little sidelight here,
Uh-huh.
but yet it has to do with the Hopewell Grange, and so I do not know coincidental, the NookChat Grange, I did the records on that, and it was 1907 when they started. So I'm just throwing this out. You never know.
Yeah. So the National Grange, weren't they drivers of, in the 30s for
Oh, yes.
rural electrification?
Yes,
Wasn't that their big program? So then Whatcom, your Grange, the Hopewell Grange, would have been very helpful to our county in
and
seeing
not,
that happen.
you're right, and not only that, the National Grange was the one that had the resolution, that's why your school buses are yellow. They were the ones, the Grange was, to get all the school buses were yellow.
So then another question is, when, sadly, the Hopewell Grange closed, because it's just been such a wonderful component in our community, did the remaining members then join the Rome Grange?
They can demit. They demit to 10 Mile. They
Oh, 10
pick
Mile,
a
okay.
Grange.
Yeah.
And then, like, because I had been a member so long, I demit to Rome. We all demit to 10 Mile. And then you can do what you want. And I demit to Rome because it's handy for me.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well, do you know how many Granges are operating in what county
Yes,
right
I
now?
do. There are 6 still. There was at one time 11 Granges. And the Granges that are still active are Haney and 10 Mile, Lummi Island, Rome. I'm missing one.
Is it North Bellingham?
North Bellingham. Oh, and North Bellingham, as I say, you always got to have money. Well, why that little Grange is still going, they have what they call the Biker Sunday. And the big Harleys use the Grange on a Sunday. And they've given money and they've helped it going. So if you go by, it's on Northwest Road, close to the Smith. You go by there on a Sunday, I don't know which one, but the bikers will be out there.
That's Biker Church.
Biker church,
Is
yeah.
that what they do at the Grange? Yeah, Biker Church.
And that's actually why Hopewell was able to go as long as it did, because until 2.5 years ago, there was a church
Yeah,
meeting
was.
in there. And
At
so,
a rental.
From rent, yeah. And there were a few, in the time that I was a member, there were a couple of weddings. People did their kids' birthday parties there and stuff, so we got a bit from rental, but yeah, it was just not enough.
Is there any other questions? Yes.
Oh, I have one. I'm just curious about the presentations every year at the Northwest Washington Fair that the Granges do. It was all the perfect produce and it was all so beautiful.
Well, the
Can
Grange,
you hear?
the Grange display you had at the fair,
At the
were you
fair.
talking about?
Oh, yes, we did
Yes,
the
we was talking about
Grange
that.
booth.
Yes.
Yeah, we did that for years, but that's another thing. It takes a certain amount of people to
Sure,
do
yeah.
that, and I don't know when.
Did you have to come up with a theme every year yourselves, or how did that work, the whole process?
Yeah, the membership came up with the
Yeah,
theme.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Was it fun, or was it just ended up being
So-
a lot of work? And there weren't enough
Well,
people?
it can be a lot of fun. We had a lot, we had a lot of people. And
yeah, the fun was directly proportional to the number of people. I mean, isn't that the way it is?
Definitely. And one lady, she was so talented. She could always come up with a theme, and she said, we'll do, I remember, treasures to gold. so you got all these old things, you know, and you're going to recycle. And then she had another pile that you just sprayed them with gold and what you could take out of the junk and be gold. I think we got a purple ribbon on that one.
Well, I remember I couldn't wait each year to go to the fair and see
Yeah,
how
see
Hopewell
what-
did,
yeah.
whether what place it was.
Yeah,
It
that's
really
right.
didn't make any difference, but they were there.
Yes, they were.
Well, and it certainly piques an interest in people's minds when they see something Grange.
yes,
They,
yes.
they would question because of the displays.
Yeah.
That's
They
true.
would go, so what is a Grange?
I
What's a
know.
Grange for? Because the displays were always, they were very, very good.
The who's ever in charge at the fair, and so you have every year, like, you either have to do a vegetable, you have to do that, or you can do a whatever you want, and that's
Oh.
how you choose. So you don't always do all the vegetables and the canning, and
Right.
that's really a lot of work.
So they gave you a theme, more or less, or
No, you had
No,
your,
you had made up your own theme, but
sometimes-
then
yeah,
sometimes they did?
they had
Okay.
a theme for the fair, and you
Okay.
had to.
Well, and then it was a shared theme among all of the Granges to
That's
see who
right.
could
Oh, okay.
put together the best.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I always wondered when I went to the fair and seen it, I said, how do they do that?
Yeah,
I think it's like anything we do in life. You know, you just start,
You just
and
start.
a lot of times you don't know how it's going to end out.
Yeah.
that's
But
right.
sometimes, basically, what it is, you amaze yourself,
Yeah.
and that gives you pride that you've done something, accomplished something, and that's
Yeah.
what it's about.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
you two ladies have certainly accomplished a lot in more ways than I think any of us have realized, and that's the neat part. Is there any other questions? Okay, we thank Francis and Arlene for being with us today, and I guess that's it.